Good morning, great morning, wonderful morning, spectacular morning, outstanding morning, magnificent morning, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious morning. Yes, again, the beautiful reminder of choice that you have, I have, that we all have. And again, what is that choice? Why do I repeat it so often? Well, because that choice is the choice of how you're going to think, and how you think determines the outcomes of your life. See, that's why it's so important. And what's beautiful is once you engage with that and enter into the kingdom of heaven, which is the kingdom of thought, your life starts to change. Your outcomes, your results, they all shift based from what's within. As within, so without. Type that in the comments. As within, so without. And that's what we teach here at Elevitality. This is what Dolly and I put together to help you to understand this more so that you can make the changes that you seek in your life. Because here's the truth with regards to all of this. If you don't change the inner narrative, the outside won't change. But see, you can change it. And again, this is where all the power is. Now, what have we been studying? We've been studying this beautiful gem here, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. And hasn't this been amazing? And for those of you who don't have a copy of this, make sure that you do get a copy. Get this specific copy with this imagery on the front, because it's a specific edition that we researched to make sure was correct and original. Now, with that being said, when you do get your copy, yes, underline it, highlight it, but most importantly, apply it. Use it in your life. Remember, application, baby, that's where it's at. If you don't apply this information, then you're not going to see any change. It's kind of like an instruction manual for a device of some kind, or I don't know what it is. Maybe it's for a car. It has the information on how to use that specific thing. But if you don't use the instructions and actually engage with it, with whatever that is, guess what? You're not going to deliver a different outcome. And again, that's the important thing that we want you to connect with as you're going through this. All right, so are you ready? Let's to dive into this. Let's get your gold cards out. Make sure you have that with you. And before we go into the science of getting rich, I'm going to read something from this other beautiful gem here, In Tune with the Infinite, that I love this beginning sentence here. And, or I guess it's a paragraph here, and it's tied into the supreme fact of the universe. Now, remember, Wallace Wattles talks about how there's a thinking substance that permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe that can be shaped and molded. It's again intelligent. It has a desire for you to succeed and live the life that you would love to live. Well, here, what's shared by Ralph Waldo Trine is the great central fact of the universe is that spirit is infinite, life and power that is back of all, that animates all, that manifests itself in and through all, that self-existent principle of life from which all has come, and not only from which all has come, but from which all has continually coming. So what is he saying? He's talking about here how this infinite source is there, and it's responsible for everything that you see, and there's an abundance of it. In other words, you have access to a source from which there is no limitation. Now, sit in that for a moment, because it ties beautifully into getting rich and changing the course of your life by accepting new ideas, imagining new ideas, I should say. That's actually a better statement to say. And again, you have access to all of it. The great all is there, and it's intelligent and wants you to succeed. All right, so let's go into this, the science of getting rich here, and move into where we left off from. Okay, here we go. Boom. Okay. Now, here we're on page 80, and I really want you to grab on to this specific sentence here. And this has been a theme throughout this book about you making the best of yourself, of you getting rich, of you constantly working to improve your outcomes. And here he points out how the best thing that you can do for the whole world is to make the most of yourself. Now, I do recommend that you write this in the first person, write it in your notes right now. The best thing I can do for the whole world is to make the most of myself. Make the most of yourself. Now, you can serve God and man in no more effective way than by getting rich. That is, if you get rich by the creative method and not by the competitive one. Now, let's go through why this is true again. Well, because with money, you can experience more of life. Everything has a price, everything has a cost. Why don't people have money? It's not because it's not theirs, because of how they think. With that being said, the more money that you have, the more you can enjoy all that life has to offer, the more that you can lead others to live that way as well. Remember, there's nothing noble or great about poverty because it keeps you restrained. It doesn't enable you to experience all that life has to offer. And there is a lot that life has to offer. Wouldn't you agree? There's a whole bunch. So with this being said, I'm going to repeat this again. The very best thing that you can do for the whole world is to make the most of yourself. You can serve God and man no more effective way than by getting rich. That is, if you get rich by the creative method and not by the competitive one. Now remember, we talked about the difference between the competitive method and the creative one. The competitive method is all about, getting my fair piece, and there's going to be a loser of some kind. Maybe it's you, maybe it's the others. I don't know. But the whole point is that competitive plane doesn't expand. It doesn't grow. See, the creative plane, in terms of how it sees things, when you're in that, it works from making things more. Remember the example I shared with you about the pie and how you have a pie and people think in terms of slices. I got to get my slice. And there are very few people who operate from the premise that they can make a bigger pie. See, that's the creative way of thinking. Now, another thing, we assert that this book gives in detail the principles of the science of getting rich. And if that is true, you do not need to read any other book upon the subject. This may sound narrow and egotistical, but consider there is no more scientific method of computation in mathematics than by addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. No other method is possible. Now let's just sit in that for a moment. Let's talk about the principles of mathematics. There's only one set of principles that are tied to mathematics. There's no other principle involved when it comes to that. Only one. Now let's go into solving an equation in mathematics. If you get the answer wrong, is it because the principle's wrong, or is it because there's an error in your method? Now think about that. See, that's what he's talking about here. When it comes to mathematics, there's just one principle. You just need to study the principles of mathematics and then work with that. Well, it's the same when it comes to the science of getting rich. There's really only one principle that's tied to the science of getting rich, and that is to abide by what's shared within this book. Now, before we proceed, for those of you who are watching the live stream on this and would love to understand clearly the science of getting rich and to apply it in your life, or to seek some assistance to implement what it is that we're sharing with you here, then go to elevitality.com and register for Master Your Mind, and also reach out if you need some assistance with regards to that. You'll thank yourself later. Now, let's go further.